Well, welcome everyone. I'm excited to have you back for this interview of the 2018 Shift series. I am thrilled to welcome a new friend, new to me, maybe not new to you. Renee Jayne is here with us today, and we're going to be talking about integrated holistic nutrition and what that looks like from the inside out. So I want to welcome you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here with you.
It's a treat.
Yeah.
I love that word of nutrition and being nourished. And so I want to bring food and the ways in which we support our nutrition forward in new ways in the Shift series this year. So it seems so appropriate that we're kicking off with this conversation. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to be doing the work that you do in the world?
Sure. Yes. So, yeah. Renee Jayne. I recently started writing a little bit about my story, so I'll try to keep it succinct, right? You know, there's those moments that are catalysts to lots of things. So approximately at age 16, I had high cholesterol, and I had all these doctor's appointments going on. And at that age, I was much more interested in getting my driver's license and all of that. So I ignored most of the things. And then by age 17, I was getting migraine headaches pretty bad, to the point where I was not coherent. You know, I couldn't get out of bed. And so you can imagine one prescription after another, and I had a lot of digestive issues, and there was all kinds of appointments around that. And then shortly after that, a doctor thought I had leukemia, which I did not, but they had found that my blood cell count was so off that I basically didn't have a functioning immune system. And so I was getting really sick, and I was the girl who was like popping the allergy medication all the time. Yes. Lived on those things. And I remember asking at that moment, because, you know, you do the research, and I was just dabbling a little bit. When I picture it, actually, it's funny because I remember like the box old computer, you know, and I remember thinking maybe it's a food that I'm eating or too much dairy. And when I shared this with the doctor, his response was, oh, food's just a placebo effect. It has no bearing whatsoever, right? So I took that advice and moved on my way. And then by 19, I ended up with something called shingles, which, remember, the doctor at that time said, oh, this is something older people get, and can't imagine why you have it. Here's some more prescriptions. And then I lost my menstrual cycle. So this was like the catalyst of everything. At this point, it had been gone for 10 months. And sometimes women lose their menstrual cycle when they are working out extra hard or very thin. And that wasn't the case for me. I wasn't working out really at all. And I didn't know the reason, but my hormones were definitely wacky. And when I read the ingredients of this particular pill, which the name I'm losing now, I just knew there's no way with the side effects that I was going to take it. And it was the thing that got me thinking there's got to be another way. And I knew intuitively that I could fix it myself. I didn't know how, but I figured from that point forward, I started paying more attention to what I was eating. And at that time, I was a big Coke and Pepsi drinker. I ate a lot of fast food. I was a cigarette smoker. Marlboro Lights were my favorite, and I ate, sugar galore. And my first job years prior was at Dairy Queen. So like my whole life was just, and my mother, I'm sure she tried her best to educate me, so it's not her fault, but I just didn't care about food. I didn't like cooking. And so slowly but surely, I started to change some things. And not everything changed right away, but at the time I was in college at this point, and I had been running a business that was kind of fell into my lap. And it was a small little business that started to grow, but I was a workaholic, we'll put it that way. And I was also in sales. I was winning these big trips, you know, working hard, playing hard. And I remember being in Jamaica on this beach, and there was this newer friend next to me, and she looked so beautiful in her body and her bathing suit. And I just kind of noticed that I was sitting there hiding under my beach cover up with the towel and the book. And I'm looking at her and all these people playing volleyball. And I was in fear that if I drank too much or if I ate the wrong thing, I could get another migraine and my whole trip would be ruined. Right. And I didn't know where I was. And I remember asking her, like, you look really great. What are you doing? And she said, I'm doing this cleanse, and told me all about it. And that was my first time really hearing about cleansing and stuff. And so I made that decision on the beach that I would go home and I would do a cleanse. And I did it very reluctantly. I didn't believe, I remember it actually brought me into a Whole Foods for the first time. And I didn't even know how to find an artichoke. So when I talk to new clients and they're all intimidated, you know, I can really put myself in their shoes, because you get nervous, like even to find those things when you're not unsure. But after 14 days, it really shifted everything for me. Like I like to say that my migraines were completely gone and everything was perfect. It wasn't, but it was so much better. And one of the things that stuck out to me is that I ate an orange during the cleanse and it tasted like candy. And I was looking at the sticker to see, like, is this some special orange or something? But it wasn't. It was just probably a Florida orange. And it's just that my taste buds had so drastically changed that I had this relationship to food that was different. And I trusted my body in a way that I had never trusted it before. And so that was really a big catalyst to me getting into nutrition and health. It came about because I kind of had to, not because it was cool, right? And I had quit smoking around this time and slowly started making a lot of changes. And another catalyst for me was reading the book, The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan, who's a huge hero of mine. And that just gave me this really big picture about our food system and the way that we eat and treat animals and each other. And so I just realized, like, this is my thing. And I kind of took it full speed ahead. And on the side, I had hired a life coach when I was a young teenager, probably around 18 or 19. And at that time, it was to heal all the baggage stuff from family. And the funny thing,
you hired a life coach at 18?
Yeah, I had started this, I kind of shared a small business at that time while I was in college. And it seemed weird that I would hire a life coach. I remember back then, no one really knew what life coaches were. And they were saying, like, you hired a coach, like, are you an athlete? I would always get that question. And I said, no, it's a life coach. But in the environment that I was in at the time, we were like trying to grow ourselves so we could be better in our company, right? And so it seemed like the natural thing to do. It just, I'm very grateful that that happened. And there were several different people I worked with, and they were great. But the one thing that I noticed looking back is very few of them ever asked me about what I was eating. So we did all this work on, you know, affirmations and my psychology and all these behavioral things. But like, I was eating at Burger King and shoving, you know, Snickers bars down my face and chain smoking cigarettes, and no one asked me, and I didn't think to tell them. Maybe I just purposely hid it. I don't know. I may have done that too. So there's kind of these addictive patterns of like unhealthy behavior. And so by the time I got to the point where I decided I'm going to go to nutrition school, this was years later, I realized that there has to be a connection here between the mental and the emotional self and then the actual physical body self. And I put those together and I started coaching people really quickly while I was in nutrition school, which they say you shouldn't do, but I just felt like I needed to dive in. And I had actually gotten my life coach certification at that point. And I never planned to use it. I just did it, right? I figured I'd never be a life coach, but here we are. So, so those are some of the things. And I've been coaching people for 7-8 years at this point now, and I've really made a business out of helping people heal in lots of ways, you know. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific nutritional approach that you follow, or how do you move people through that process?
Yeah, it's evolved for sure. But I would say at the core of all of it would be more of an Ayurvedic approach, I would say. You know, I feel like everybody's different. And so I never want to say, like, this is the one way that has to happen. And I've been through so much with my own health that has knocked me down every time I thought this is the way, right? Like I learned, nope, that's not just the right way. So my approach is really to help people find themselves. I have a quote or a brand, I guess, of my business called Love Yourself Naked. And the idea behind that is really to do the work to love yourself authentically, real, and get to know what your body needs. And that's not the easiest approach. So people who work with me, I tend to like let them know right away, this isn't the magic pill place that's gonna, we're gonna do deep stuff, but it's gonna last. So yeah.
So what is a journey like that like? Is that a multi-year journey? Is that something where you can see shifts right away? I had an experience similar to yours where sometimes the catalyst can be as short as 7 or 14 days to see the whole door open up of a different way. But then creating long-term lasting change is a journey. What does that look like from where you sit, having been doing this so long?
Yeah, so it is definitely different for each person, but I think that one of the things that helps to kick it off is clean food, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that'll shift everything when you start there. And for some people, it's working out, like they get a habit around moving their body. And for some people, it's a meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that if we get to the basis of changing your food, then we can start to add those other things on. And I just got a little thing that said internet connection's unstable, so make sure you can hear me. Yeah, so I don't have I have a plan in my mind when I'm working with someone, but it could take on various things. It could be more mindfulness, but it usually starts with food, and then it goes into some kind of a practice of centering in the body, and then it usually moves into what are some of the beliefs you have around life and that limit you. And then I work really hard with people specifically to get them to release a lot of emotional trauma, because I think that we carry that, right? And if it's still there, yeah.
That was actually my next question. So you're reading my mind. One of the things that we're seeing increasingly, especially as the energies move into this new year, is a lot got surfaced to be seen in 2017. A lot that wanted to come up and be healed in our political sphere, our economic sphere, in gender conversations, but also in our personal health. And the 2018 energies are all about releasing the things that got us there in the first place, letting go and claiming the new way. So what does trauma release look like from where you sit? What is that process involved?
Yeah. So just a side personal story. Somewhere about 3 years or so into my business coaching practice, helping people, I started to, one thing I'll say is I always attracted a lot of different kinds of clients. So all different ages, not just women work with me, men and women. And so I've got this like bird's eye view into all these different kinds of people, which is a beautiful blessing in a lot of ways. And then, of course, it reflects back on you, right? So
mirror.
You get to do all the work. And the word narcissism back then started coming up quite a bit, and me noticing a lot of the dynamics in these relationships with some of my clients and the people in their lives. Then I started noticing it within mine, and so I dove really deep into that work and started learning more about the empath. And I really believe that there's a scale, like there's like really, really empathic, and then we all have most of us, I should say, I'll have a little bit. And then same thing with like, there's narcissism, which most humans are a bit narcissist. But then there's the personality disorder, right? And there's a big scale there, and all kinds of people can range in between. And when I started to do that work for myself, so I could show up more so for clients, I realized that there's no other way for me to be able to rise above that unless I did emotional release work. And I started to get this kind of stuck energy out of my body that was trauma from childhood, that was feelings around lack of worth. A lot of it was around wanting to be liked, so badly, and not even realizing how much that created dynamics in my relationships and my work and all these things. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
Yeah.
but yeah, so those were some of the big ones.
So as a person starts out on a journey to shift in these ways, whether that's emotionally, physically, whatever reason they know they need a nutritional shift, what do you see aside from like the having to face their emotional baggage maybe they've been carrying? Um, I'm curious about what that kind of hero's journey looks like as we
Yeah,
make those changes.
kind of like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, so it to be blunt, most people don't usually show up and say, I want to do emotional healing work, right? Some do, but most people don't. They usually show up because they want to lose weight, or they want to heal some huge health issue that they've been dealing with for a really long time that's finally gotten them at their wit's end. And so it usually begins there. It begins with some kind of area or habit that they really need to get honed in on or get into place. And then from there, the dynamic usually moves into relationship, typically with mom and dad, of course, and looking at those kind of beliefs that we had or things that we wanted from mom or dad that we didn't necessarily get, and all of that. And then what really starts to move from there, I think, and I like that we're talking about this because it's helping me kind of think it through, is finding where in their life that they're really not holding habits or patterns. So that we have values, right? We have like as it's called, the espoused values, the ways that we really want to show up are more of our behavioral values. The espoused values are more of like how we're actually showing up. And then we start to see there's a huge disconnect. It's like the corporation that says family first, and then they have nothing in the organizational structure that supports people who have family, right? Like there's just a disconnect. And I think that's a huge wake up for people, where they start to decide and they go this way or this way. Like, I was interviewing a woman not too long ago, Desiree Attaway, for something that I'm doing, you may know. And she said something to me that really resonated. And I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it was basically like, you can really only live out 4 values at one time, And that hit me hard, because I could list out 20 values right now, but if we really focus on those 4, then we're showing up in our life in the way that reflects what our soul needs and wants. And from there, it can kind of start to get a little tricky, because when we start to see these are my values and this is my reality and they don't match up, it can be tough, right? Really tough. And so we start to dive deeper into how we can make some shifts and change those things. And along the way, make food sustainable, find peace with our present moment, and acceptance of ourself, So, yeah.
I love hearing your story. We actually have so much in common. Michael Pollan's a hero of mine as well, and was a part of my big shift. So as you have grown the ecosystem of your business and brought yourself online, you have now put steps in place for a group program. Just tell us a little bit about what that looks like and what your online offerings are.
Yeah. So years ago, probably 7 years ago, I began a cleanse. It was an 18-day cleanse. We still have it within our community, but it's under construction right now. I'm evolving it. And I also created a program called Love Your Life Academy. And that was more to help people do the emotional work that we're talking about, to look at their relationships while at the same time maintaining a healthy eating lifestyle. That's not perfect, right? Like there's no perfection, but being able to incorporate kind of all the things. And there's a bunch of other programs in between that didn't last. And what I started to really get is that even though the cleanse is great and the other program is great, sometimes people need a little bit more zeroing in on very specific nutritional things. And I don't like to necessarily say that I'm a medical intuitive on my website, but there's an aspect of the work that I do with people that I'm really in tune with their body. And so if they have heartburn, I sometimes feel the heartburn, you know? And so there's an aspect of that coaching dynamic that I think is really invaluable. And there's certain things that I've learned over all these years, not just from my own health, but also working with so many different kinds of clients, that it's just really helped me to think like, okay, they need to do this and this. And in our world these days, not only do we have a lot of things with, you know, the patriarchy going on, right? So we're carrying all that baggage, but there's so many more autoimmune issues and genetic and nutrigenomic studies, and there's just so much that there's no way people are able to do that work and maintain their life unless they want to go into nutrition, right? And so, and for me, that's kind of fun. Like I love that stuff and I love people. And so that's the work of this newer program called My Nutrition 360, where right now I'm working with people privately.
Yep.
But I would like to create a group, because I feel always every time there's a community of, there's just so much more healing that happens, right? Because we all play off each other in the mirror.
Yeah.
So because it's a newer program, I'm just really kind of like in it right now, working with people one-on-one again, which I did for a while. And then I went to groups, and now I'm kind of
back. I know. I'm the same way. I love it.
Yeah.
I love both sides of it so much.
Yeah.
I have a question before we kind of tell people where they can find you online, about where your thinking around cleansing and detoxing sits right now. I know that for me, there was a phase where I felt like cleansing and detox was especially really important when we were facing that diagnosis or that crisis. And then if we brought our body systems back into a stasis, that it has its own natural mechanisms for clearing and detoxing. But increasingly, and especially now raising my children and seeing how much exposure we're all getting in so many different ways, I feel like we're entering into a phase where we need to build natural and regular recurring core routines around detox and cleanse in ways that our parents didn't need to, and certainly our grandparents didn't need to. Where are you in that thinking? Is this something that you see as seasonal? Are you an intermittent fasting proponent? Like what ways do you see us supporting our detox long term?
Great question. So right now I would say that I'm in favor of a little of all things, right? So I'll put it to you this way. I have always promoted that we should be doing seasonal cleanses. And I like a cleanse that is more of a mild cleanse for people, especially if they've never done one before. But like when I say mild, we don't need necessarily to do like a shock and awe to our systems, like if you've never done like a 20-day juice fast, like maybe you start with like a couple days of a juice fast first, you know what I mean? Like calm your body down and trust it. And so I still think it's important to do seasonal cleansing, and particularly seasonal because there's buildup, and I in Ayurvedic medicine, you really want to do things along with the season, right? So that's kind of a whole nother conversation. I won't go on the tangent there. But there's so much to be said about intermittent fasting, and I'm a big proponent of that. In fact, I did that today. Like I didn't eat until noon, and stopped eating at like 6:30 last night. And what's beautiful about that is how we can just take this one day and kind of help restore our digestive system a little bit, right? And I've been drinking a lot of celery juice for the last 70 days or so. As I read it in the medical medium. I don't know if everything in that book's awesome. It seems pretty cool, but like I figured I'd try that. And it's really changed my whole everything. I love celery juice right now. And so I would say like there's little pieces that we can be adding in regularly, because we're exposed to so much that we need to have a regular system for flushing out things out of our body. But it doesn't have to necessarily be this big thing, right? you know, more of a, it's a lifestyle, like pieces that we can add in, you know, ways that we can get heavy metals out regularly versus like, because you know there are times that people can have like massive amounts of heavy metals, and if they do this crazy detox, like they could actually make it worse, you know. So you got to be really careful and make sure you work with somebody you trust and that has knowledge on the whole thing.
I love that. That's so great. Well, I really want to encourage people to follow you and find you online. Where are the best places to get into your ecosystem?
Yeah, so first place is my website, so Renee Jayne, JAYNE.com. And then you can also go to loveyourselfnaked.com, which is just another avenue. And then all over social media, YouTube, Facebook, you know, Instagram. Those are
Where's your favorite place to hang out?
You know, it's probably Instagram/Facebook right now. I don't really know. Yeah, one of those two. I want it to be YouTube. I want to connect with people more there.
All right. We'll support you in that intention. Everybody go find Renee on YouTube and like and follow on Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you hop on her list. I'm excited to see how My Nutrition 360 comes forward. And yeah, you've inspired me to bring some more thinking about those seasonal cleanses forward as well. Well, before we wrap, I just want to say that sometimes when you find your way into an interview like this, you get so many ideas that it's both inspiring but also potentially overwhelming. And so for anyone who did find their way into this conversation and maybe just wants one simple, clear thing that they could start with to kind of get into the energetic flow of all that you're describing, what would that one thing be that you would recommend?
I would say 10 minutes at a minimum every morning to start your day with like a little prayer, a little meditation, a glass of lemon water. I know that seems like a lot of things, but like it's really not, you know. And if you can move your body while you do any of those, then that's a bonus, because it, you know, 10 minutes, it could be 30, it could be an hour, but at a minimum 10. And that'd change everything. It really would. Just the whole way you approach your day, the way you think, the way you feel. Yeah.
I love it. Little morning magic. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this interview. I feel a friendship burgeoning. We have so much in common, and I'm so excited to learn more about your work and to help others find their way to you as well. So I want to thank you. Yeah. I want to thank everyone who came along for this interview. We're really excited to have you. We're grateful for your interaction, your replies to the emails, your shares. We look forward to hearing more from you about what you would like to hear about more in this shift series, and also hope that you will take our blessing forward as you integrate this one thing in your shift. So thank you all so much, Renee. Thank you, and I will see you all online.